What if your entire life made no sense? No, I'm not talking about spiritual meaning or cosmic destiny. I'm talking about the everyday actions you perform on autopilot, the job you clock into, the alarm you obey, the routine you repeat. You wake up, not because you're inspired, but because you're expected to. And as your feet hit the floor, you become that obedient body, dragging around a soul that feels increasingly misplaced. Have you ever felt that? That strange dissonance, like something inside you doesn't quite match the world around you. A quiet hum of discomfort, a static buzz in the background. You can't explain it, but you can't shake it either. It's like your life is moving in a direction that everyone else seems fine with, but you never chose. What if that low-frequency discomfort is not a flaw, but a message? What if it's your essence, screaming beneath the surface, begging you to listen? Not a panic attack, not burnout, but a spiritual alarm clock you've been snoozing your whole life. Think back. Ever since childhood, you were told the same story. Study hard, succeed, become someone. But no one asked you if you wanted to become that someone. You were taught to chase goals, collect achievements, and define success by what you can produce. But always under one condition: you must perform. From school to adulthood, everything was preparation for labor. As if work were the natural endgame of existence. As if the human being was born to be efficient. But what if it's all wrong? What if this entire system is an elaborate play, where everyone wears a costume, follows a script, and claps on cue? Without questioning who wrote the story, they sold you work as fulfillment, told you success would complete you. But now here you are, soul crumpled, days blending into one another, haunted by a subtle but persistent sense that something's off. And the cruelest part? The moment you pause, the world punishes you. Don't produce? You're lazy. Don't advance? You're falling behind. Don't contribute? You're wasting time. But let me ask you, says who? Who decided that rest is laziness? That joy without purpose is immaturity? That simply existing without grinding for a goal is a waste of time? Right there, in that crack, something ancient begins to whisper. A buried suspicion, passed down in silence. A truth that generations tried to suppress but couldn't kill. Maybe the human being wasn't made to work. Maybe this obsession with performance, with proving your value, with always doing, isn't human nature. Maybe it's a prison. And the bars aren't iron, they're social expectations. Productivity metrics, calendar invites, cultural shame. Have you ever felt like every task you complete is actually pulling you further from yourself? That every productive day is a quiet betrayal of the part of you that craves something wild, untamed, alive? Then you're not crazy. You're waking up. Here's a question that might sting a little. How many times have you felt guilty, just for doing nothing? We've been trained to believe that stillness is waste, that rest is a flaw, that unless something can be measured, monetized, or explained, it has no value. You've felt it, haven't you? That creeping guilt on a quiet Sunday. That urge to make use of your free time. That itch to open your phone, check your calendar, or get something done, just so the silence doesn't make you uncomfortable. But who decided that joy has to earn its keep? Who told you that happiness must be productive? This is how the system wins. Not by forcing you into chains, but by convincing you to wear them yourself. You internalize the pressure. You become your own supervisor. And the scariest part is, you think it's normal. Because they didn't just train your actions, they trained your identity. How do most people introduce themselves? I'm a lawyer. I'm a teacher. I'm a developer. But what happens when that title is taken away? Who are you without your productivity? They made you believe that your job is your value. And if you lose the job, you lose yourself. That's not just sad. That's terrifying. Because now, you've become a rented identity. You exist, not as a being, but as a function. You are accepted, as long as you are useful. You are seen, as long as you produce. But when you stop contributing, you're discarded like a broken tool. Just another file, another asset, another number in the system. And here's where it gets even worse. This logic seeps into your relationships. You start viewing people as resources, connections, networks. You wonder what they can do for you, what they bring to the table. And they do the same to you. They calculate your worth. Are you beneficial? Influential? Worth their time? So the bond becomes transactional. And when the usefulness runs dry, the bond breaks. We've lost the art of being together without purpose, of talking without agendas, of sitting with someone not to gain but just to be. It's no wonder that even rest has become a performance. Even joy has been scheduled. Even leisure must be explained. This is the root of your anxiety. Not laziness, not weakness, but the violent mismatch between your human soul and a world that only values machines. There was once a voice that dared to say what the rest of us barely allowed ourselves to feel. A voice that was ridiculed, misunderstood, and largely ignored, not because it was wrong, but because it was too honest. That voice belonged to Georges Bataille. He didn't want to teach you how to be more productive, how to chase goals more efficiently, or how to outperform others in the endless race we call life. He wasn't here to optimize your habits, maximize your potential, or turn your pain into profit. Quite the opposite, he wanted you to stop, to pause, to look in a direction no one dared to look. He wanted you to ask the question modern society fears the most. What if my life doesn't need a purpose to be worth living? According to Bataille, we are not machines created to serve utility. We are not born to fit into systems, meet expectations, or convert our time into measurable outcomes. We are human precisely in the moments that resist all logic of usefulness, when we feel something for no reason, when we cry without an audience, when we dance without a plan, or sit in silence without guilt. These are not errors in the human program. They are the most human parts of us. He called this phenomenon waste. But not the waste we are taught to avoid, the consumerist, material kind. No, for Bataille, waste was a sacred act. It was a rupture in the framework of utility, a rebellion against the demand to always produce, always prove, always perform. He saw waste as a portal back to the self, a moment when the human being could reclaim their right to simply be. To do something without gain, without explanation, without strategy, is perhaps the greatest rebellion of our time. Not because it achieves anything, but because it refuses to achieve. And in that refusal, something beautiful is born, the return of the human soul. But herein lies the problem. Our world has no place for what it cannot measure. And if you are not useful, you are dismissed. Not just ignored, erased. This is why the system goes one step further. It doesn't just demand your productivity, it convinces you that joy without output is a sign of failure. You are conditioned to fear stillness, to mistrust your own impulses, to associate rest with decay and pleasure with weakness. Over time, you begin to internalize the logic. You stop asking yourself what feels true, and instead only ask what looks successful. You measure your days not by meaning, but by output. Your identity becomes a function, your value a transaction, and your presence a performance. Slowly, without even noticing, you begin to disappear. Bataille understood this danger. He knew that once your inner experience is replaced by external validation, you become hollow, present but disconnected, active but lost. He offered an alternative, one that doesn't promise control or clarity, but does offer depth. He invited us into the inner experience, a descent into the wild, untamed part of ourselves that defies structure, denies strategy, and dissolves the illusion of perfection. He didn't suggest balance or moderation. He spoke of rupture, intensity, even excess. Because what we need is not more discipline, but more surrender. Not better systems, but deeper presence. We are not here to master life. We are here to feel it, in all its chaos, contradiction, and uncontrollable beauty. When we give ourselves permission to be useless, to act without return, to simply exist, we step outside the machinery of production and re-enter the sacred space of being. That space is not designed by logic. It is carved by longing. There's a part of you, untouched by deadlines, titles, or expectations, that's been waiting quietly for years. It doesn't know what time it is. It doesn't care about goals. It never asks, am I productive enough? It only wants one thing, to be free. You've seen glimpses of it. When you watched a sunset without checking the clock. When you laughed and didn't know why. When you felt joy without accomplishing anything. That part, raw, untamed, deeply human, is still alive. You didn't kill it. You just buried it under routines, metrics, meetings, and performance reviews. Every time you feel that low hum of unease, when you say something's missing, but can't explain what, it's that part trying to breathe. Bataille believed this part of us could never be fully destroyed. It's not dead, it's just imprisoned. And every time you obey the unspoken rule to be useful, you tighten the lock. So what happens when you finally stop? When the world gets quiet, when the notifications end, and there's nothing left to check, you feel it. That ache, that confusion, that unfamiliar sense that something inside you is stirring. That's not your failure. That's your true self, asking why you've ignored it for so long. The way out isn't glamorous. It's not a retreat in the mountains or a six-step plan. It begins with one radical act: to stop obeying. Stop measuring your worth in productivity. Stop seeing rest as laziness. Stop hunting for meaning in your job title. Start reclaiming your right to exist without explanation. Do one thing for no reason. Listen to music without multitasking. Walk with no destination. Stare at a wall if you must. Not to reset, not to recharge, not to recover, but to waste time on purpose. In that waste, something sacred returns. A life that does not need to be justified. A breath that is not monetized. A soul that doesn't ask permission to feel. And here's the quiet revolution. When you stop performing usefulness, the system inside you begins to unravel. Not with fire or fury, but in subtle moments. One day, you stop apologizing for doing nothing. Another day, you laugh without a plan. And slowly, silently, you begin to live again. True freedom doesn't come from escaping society. It comes from deprogramming the need to earn your existence. It's not about quitting your job or disappearing from the world. It's about reclaiming your right to be unprofitable and still worthy. So ask yourself, who would you be if you stopped trying to matter? What would remain if everything productive was stripped away? That's the part Bataille called sacred excess. Not indulgence, not selfishness, but intensity with no utility. Experience that serves no system, but restores your soul. If you're feeling afraid now, that's a good sign. Fear means you're approaching a threshold that most never cross. You're not being reckless, you're being real. So here's your challenge, if you dare to accept it. Don't just watch this video. Don't just nod and scroll. Go down to the comments and write one sentence. I didn't come to serve. I came to feel. It's not a slogan. It's a mark. A quiet scream. A trace that says, I was here, and I remembered who I am. And then do the unthinkable. Close your tab. Turn off your screen. Sit in silence. Not to be better. Not to prepare. But to finally be useless without shame. Because in that moment, you'll be more alive than all the versions of you who only ever existed to function.